Hello everyone, I'm Mizu, and welcome to another episode where I build something. So in this episode, I am going to be building, as the title already told you, is a wizard's house, or a wizard's tower. I'm not really sure what I'm going to call it, but that's kind of the idea. A house slash towers slash, I don't know, something. This entire video is basically me going through the entire process of building it from start to finish, all of my struggles, and all of the technical issues that happened in between. This wasn't supposed to be a video initially, but honestly, after I started recording the time-lapse for the first iteration of this build, it really felt like it was supposed to be a video, so now here we are. In the next segment, you're actually going to see the drawn concept of this entire build first, in the form of a speed paint, where I create an entire concept, or rather, I guess, a colored sketch of the entire building, or rather what I imagined for the building at the beginning. So yeah, without further ado, let's head into the time-lapse while I talk about a few things. While we're starting the sketch here, I did want to talk about my original idea behind why I wanted to make this build. As the thumbnail and title probably already told you, I wanted to create this mystical wizard's house, and this house is meant to be set in a custom biome I call the Warped Mosslands, a place that is also filled with a strange magic. I'll definitely talk about the custom biome more later, but for now, I just want to talk about the actual building itself. I knew for certain that I wanted the build to have a circular, or I guess cylindrical towers with a cone-shaped roof at the top, so that's what I went for in this concept, trying to keep in mind what materials I wanted to use for the actual build in-game. My color palette consisted of mainly blues, purples, and 3 variations of gray from light to dark. I did it intentionally this way since I also wanted to make the build with somewhat easy to acquire blocks in a typical survival world, with the aim to make this a bigger starter base, or at least that's the challenge I was aiming for while creating this concept. Compared to the last starter base I can think of on a survival world, I knew from the beginning that I would aim for this one to be about double the size. I should also mention that right after I finished this drawing, I actually went straight into building it, and I can even show you a few clips from the time-lapse I got while I was building. Unfortunately, as you'll see in the next clip after this speed paint, I ended up not liking how it looked and I had to make changes, which is why I'm showing it to you now instead of making a whole section of the video for it. You'll get to see the half-finished product in a second here, since the next clip will be my reaction to it a day after I finished it. But for now, enjoy the rest of the speed paint. I can't wait to show you the process of the final build later. Alright, so it is the next day, and I probably mentioned this in the recording before, but I didn't like how the build was turning out. And I'm about to find out what this build looks like, because I haven't seen it since yesterday. So, yeah, I'm going in blind. Oh boy. Okay, oh boy, oh god, I hate to say this. I might have to take this entire thing down. I really don't want to, but I might have to take this entire thing down and start from scratch. I genuinely don't like how this looks. I'm sorry. There's like, I don't know, something about it just feels really bulky to me, I guess. Nothing about this build feels like it gives the vibe I want it to. And yeah, sure, a lot of this build is still kind of blank. I kept the walls blank so that way I could detail them later, but it just doesn't feel like it's hitting, you know? I'm gonna have to redo this entire thing from scratch, I think. Which, by the way, is gonna suck, because I don't have World Edit, and I don't know how it works, and I'm afraid to try it. So you're probably gonna see a time-lapse really soon here of me taking down this entire thing from top to bottom. So I guess, without further ado, I'm gonna have to tear this whole thing down and start again. Let's do this thing. Alright, it's been a few days now, actually, since I tore this entire thing down. I just barely loaded the world up. The entire thing, I think, just to take it down only took about, say, 20 minutes? Which is just depressing to think about, because this entire thing took me, what, an hour and a half to build? But you know, it was a little satisfying to kind of watch and see the entire thing get torn down from top to bottom at high speed. But anyway, I really feel like I need to brainstorm something with this. Something about the way this entire thing looks, it just wasn't hitting with me. And I feel like I need to take it a little bit more slowly. Something about the way that I built it was just like building it in big sections, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes people can benefit from those types of building styles, but I feel like I just didn't in this scenario. This is definitely a bigger build for me. I actually haven't built anything that uses the entire 33 by 33 square that these usually are, especially because I'm also using a reference for this entire thing. I've never used a reference for a build before. All the builds that you see behind me have always been built just free flow, you know? No reference, no nothing, just like slight inspirations here and there, but outside of that, it's just all built by me in my head. So using a reference, I think, so far has kind of been a downgrade for me in some way. It's not my usual type of building, but I think what I'm gonna try and do now is I'm gonna try and make a template or some sort of floor plan. And the last build, it was big, but it did kind of show me that this thing can be built within this square, and I am okay with that. I don't think I should be building any bigger for that. So let's make all of the circles again. This is gonna be the front entrance area. All right, there's our circle. I'm also gonna mark where the door is so that way I have it for future reference. I will know where it is anyway, but it's just good to have it there. And off to the side here, I think the next wall should extend out this way. And then curve along here to that second part, and then curve over to the back wall. I don't want this part to be too big. It is meant to be kind of like a temporary storage space. And then since we're over in this direction, let's also get the tower that is on the side over here. All right, I think that is, yep, we're good, we're good. And then we're also gonna have the big circle, the back tower over here. All right, how does this look? Gosh, looking at the shape right now is a little bit weird right now, but I promise you it'll make a lot more sense once I start building up. I think there are still some tweaks that we could make, but I also feel like the only way to get that is to be able to actually build up and find out. So let's do that and see where it gets us. Alright, I actually want to come back in here and pause for a second and just kind of show you my thought process so far and kind of what I'm thinking so far. I do like the way that this looks. I think there are still things that are a little bit off, but I like how it looks mostly. It looks good enough to me. I think I am also just kind of beating myself up about it a little bit more than I should. One thing that I always like to remind myself, especially with a lot of my art projects, is that it's always going to look ugly first before it looks pretty. And of course, because I'm only working on the basics here, it's not gonna look good right now. I mean, heck, this wasn't supposed to be a video. But for some reason this is a video now because I've been struggling so long on this, I really need to document my struggles. This is like the biggest build I've technically made. The biggest build before this was a mushroom build that I made all the way over that direction. I might show that eventually. I mentioned it in a previous video too, having to do with this one right here. Yeah, just a little bit of encouragement for myself, and maybe you can get something out of this too. Who knows? But we should be moving on to some of the other structures here. So to start, let's get this over here. So now that we have that in, I'm also gonna add tuff over here. Okay, let's see how this looks. Alright, I think, yeah, I want to make it just a little bit bigger. Just like that. And there we go. I am really hoping going forward that this project actually does work in my favor. I have worked way too long on this already. I spent about 4 hours working on this project, both making the first iteration of this thing and then the second iteration as well. Alright, there we go. Okay, now that I have some of the basic stuff in that I want to get out of the way, I do want to kind of work on this roof right now. Alright, now that we have that in, I do really want to work on the roof. Alright. Alright, and then we also continue up and then continue inward. Then we go into our lighter color, which is our wool here. Now obviously this will get fleshed out just a little bit more. I'm just putting in the basic colors first, just to get the idea like last time. Over here, and then we add our final and brightest block. And also grab some of this, so that way it's a little bit more in. It does look like I got the original concept. Now I'm gonna start texturing this just a little bit. There we go. I think that looks a lot better. And then of course at the top, I'm not sure what to call this, like a lightning rod maybe? There we go. And that should do it. And now let's just do the same thing again on this one. This one will be slightly bigger, but it should basically be the same concept. Alright, there we go. Now look at that. Now that this is in, let me start getting some of the details in. Just a little bit of texture, get everything together just like the previous one. Alright, there we go. And just like the previous one, I'm not going to add the lightning rod like I did with this one, but I will still add this little decoration on the side just because this looks a lot better. I actually do like the way this looks. So I am gonna add some windows in where I want the windows to be, down here and possibly right here, though I believe this one is probably gonna get blocked by the tiny tower that's right here. Oh yeah, and of course I do want to add these windows in here as well. There we go. Since we're on the topic, and since I have the palette in my hotbar, I may as well do this one back here as well, so let's do that one real quick. You guys shouldn't have to see the process, you've already seen it twice so far, so let's just skip ahead. Alright, there we go. I'm pretty sure that should be it. That actually turned out great this time, and you can still see that gap right there, just like the concepts. I am going to try and tackle this smaller tower that's kind of right here. So what you can see in the original concept, of course, it does kind of extend outward like this, from this part right here. Now, I imagine this tower to be really small. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is as big as this tower needs to be. So this thing is going to be super small. It's only a 1x1 space in there. I think it would be great just for aesthetic purposes to have it. Yeah, this space is really super small. Tiny in here. Let's gather our roof colors again. This one is definitely not going to be as detailed, but we'll see what we can do with it. There we go. Now, I wish there was more that I could do with it, but you know, it does kind of help tie the builds together, and it does follow the concept like I was hoping. But man, like, just taking a step back and looking at this looks a lot better. So now that we have the actual basic build in, I can actually get started on the details, which in my opinion is the most exciting part. But of course, the world hates me. All the audio in the rest of the recording completely cut out. I'm not really sure what happened. I did notice that at the time that it cut out, that something in my recording software looked odd, but I brushed it off as nothing and moved on. Unfortunately, I have this mentality from my streaming days on Twitch of the show must go on if everything looks relatively normal. That's on me for assuming things were fine. But hey, at least the video footage was still alright, so now you get to see a highlight of the remaining hour or so I spent adding little details and bits to the build compiled down into 2 minutes. But don't worry, you're not missing much on commentary. I didn't have too much to say while I was building, so not too much was lost in the grand scheme of things. For the most part, I was just adding details to the walls, just bits of variation here and there to help liven up the overall build. It did take me a while to decide, but I also did add some white tinted windows, though I did consider going back and adding some blue to some of the windows, but you will see that later. I did struggle a bit with decorating the front doors, you can see here. I couldn't decide on how tall I wanted to make the awning or where to add the lighting for it, but eventually I was able to figure it out. The same thing also happened to the windows decorations, but I was able to figure that out relatively quick after looking over my drawn concept again. And now we're here. It has actually been a couple days since the last recording, and I had to take a break after that audio thing that happened. I did find out about it after I finished that recording, but not much has really changed in between then and now. You should have seen like the decoration here for the front entrance and the front windows right here. I also did a couple extra things like add this to help divide this area from the front entrance here, and I also added this vine texture, I guess, to this part right here because that was a part of the original sketch in my concept and I forgot to add it back. But overall, I actually think I'm really satisfied with how this entire thing turned out so far. I don't think I have anything else to fix for it, so I think for now, this thing is basically done. Or at least the outside is. Which is super exciting because, like, I've been working on this for what, 5 days now? Almost a week, it feels like. Between drafting, building that first iteration that you saw a couple clips of at the beginning, and then building it again, a lot better this time, might I add. This has been like a really wild journey for me, especially because I haven't built anything this big before. Especially in terms of making a building. I technically have made a mountain before a really long time ago, but I don't really count that. Now, I did mention this previously in this video, but this wasn't supposed to be a video. In fact, it was only supposed to be a time-lapse, but I was having such a hard time and struggling so much to get this entire thing done from start to finish that, like, documenting it and kind of my process in between felt like a better option, just to kind of show you how I was struggling, and hopefully not only that, but it will help me kind of figure out how to do this kind of stuff in the future. And also, before you ask, yes, I do know that the back is super undetailed, but that is kind of intentional because I imagine for this entire building to be kind of up against a mountain that would kind of phase into it, so there wouldn't really be a point to doing that. I guess I could do that just for the interior's sake, but it's not really that necessary. So yeah, that is basically it. I don't really know what else to say. I'm still kind of figuring out how to say stuff at the end of my videos right now, so just bear with me here. I am figuring things out as things go along. But yeah, thank you so much for watching all the way through, and tell me what you think of the build, things I could possibly improve, other ideas that you think I could do in the future maybe? Not really sure what else to say, so I guess thanks for watching, and have a good one.